We're now on Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis, and we're talking about the different holy vessels that were produced by Moshe Rabbeinu for that generation. Kol HaKelim, says the Gemara in the name of the Brisa, Sha'asa Moshe Ksherim Lo Uksherim Ligdoros. We're going to divide up the Kalim that were produced by Moshe into two categories. The large preponderant majority, but we'll soon see an exception to the rule, of Kalim that were produced by Moshe Rabbeinu are kosher for all generations, even after Moshe's death. However, chatzotzos, ksheris lo psulos ledoros. The chatzotzos that were produced by Moshe Rabbeinu cannot be used beyond the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. After Moshe Rabbeinu's death, those chatzotzos cannot be used. They're invalid. And the Gemara wants to know why. Why is that so? Chatzotzos my time. Now, it could be that there's something unique about the chatzotzos made by Moshe in that he has to create that trumpet out of his own private property. He has to own the silver that was used to make the chatzotzos. And the answer is, and now the Gemara is assuming, to justify the second part of this brisa, that the chatzotzos of Moshe cannot be used for other generations, is based on the word lecha. Lecha means that it's got to be for you, and it's got to be your private chatzotzos made out of your private possession. Lecha v'lo ledoros. Now, the Gemara is going to say that you have to be consistent. And now you have to say that every time it says the word lecha in the Torah, it means it's yours and not ledoros. The Torah commands Moshe Rabbeinu to create an ark made out of wood, and it says the word lecha. And now we're going to say hachinamia. We're going to say that lecha v'lo ledoros. We know that the aron that Moshe made was ledoros. Again, we don't know where it is today. You got to Raiders of the Lost Ark, but there is an aron somewhere on the face of the earth, B'Geniza. And if you don't believe me, ask Spielberg. Oh, I don't like to mention his name anymore. He became a Hamasnik. Okay, anyway. Ella, says the Gemara, we have to find a different reason why, based on scriptural exegesis, the chatzotzos of Moshe Rabbeinu were only for his generation, not for other generations. Ella, says the Gemara, Ileman diyomar lecha mishalcha, Ileman diyomar kaviyochel, kishalchani rotze yosem mishalahem, hainami miboy leilahachim. We have a machlokes as to how to interpret the word lecha. When the Torah says that Moshe Rabbeinu is commanded lecha, he tells you that this is a machlokes between Rabbi Hoshaya and Rabbi Yonasan, two Tanoim in Masech Yoma on Daf Gimel, and it says in the pasuk kach lecha, and it says aseh lecha. Rabbi Hoshaya contends that these phrases required Moshe to use his own personal funds, and whenever it says kach lecha or aseh lecha, he has to use his funds for that mitzvah. Rabbi Yonasan says no, we took it from the Mamonat Tzibur, from the communal funds. Ella, what does lecha mean? God is saying that, you know what? If there was no preference to take it from the Tzibur, I would have chosen you, Moshe Rabbeinu, and that your possessions would have made and prepared that mitzvah. But in any event, whether you go this way or you go that way, both would agree that the pasuk lecha doesn't mean that it's lecha l'doros self and not l'doros secha. L'doros secha, not l'doros haboim. The Gemara says, Shani Hasam. You know what? I'm going to understand that the chatzotzos that Moshe produced were only good for his generation during his lifetime. Tiyamar Kra, because it says lecha lecha trei zimni, I say lecha v'ayu lecha. So we have two psukim where the Torah repeats itself and says lecha, and then we assume that the double language of lecha, the repetition, means it's only for your generation, not for other generations. But in other contexts and other mitzvahs where it says lecha, like for example the Aron, it means that Moshe Rabbeinu makes the Aron, and that Aron is good perpetually for all generations. Tani Rav Papa Berei Rav Chanin, Kami Rav Yosef. Okay, now we're going to have a whole collection of brisos. We're going to have the brisos of Rav Papa and then the brisos of Rav Yosef, and they contradict each other. We have to figure out which brisa we want to rely on. So first we start with the brisa of Rav Papa. Menorah hoisa ba mina eshes mina zav. Fine. So this we know already, that if you make the menorah out of gold, it's got to be miksha achas. It's got to be eshes. Eshes means a raw block of material. Asa shel kesef kshera. You can make a menorah out of kesef. Now, as soon as you see the word kesef, you wonder whether or not kesef is being singled out. There's a certain chashivus, a certain significance to silver. It's not as great as gold. Today it's very high, by the way, silver. Anyway, so the Bryce wants to tell you that you could make the menorah out of silver. What about other materials? Shel eitz, shel bats, excuse me. Bats is translated into English as tin. Shel avers, lead. Shel gistron, I don't know what that is, some sort of a metal. Anyway, Rabbi Posel, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Machshi. Rebbe holds that the only substance other than gold that is kosher for menorah is only kesef. Any other metal cannot be used, according to Rebbe, in this price of Rav Papa, for the menorah. We're going to see later on Rav Papa himself has that price, but Rav Yosef has a different price, according to which Rebbe would allow and validate a menorah made of other metallic substances. Now, according to the version of the Brisa as transmitted by Rav Papa, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda machshir. However, even though Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda is machshir, and he validates other metals for a menorah, which means not just silver, but it could be made of tin, it could be made of other alloys, it could be made of what else do we say, of lead. But nevertheless, there are certain cases which are not metal substances that even Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda rejects and invalidates. Shel eitz, if it's made of wood. Shel etzem, or it's made of bone. Shel zchuchis, it's made out of glass. Divrei hakol psul. So then, according to this brisa, Rebbe holds that the only other substance for a menorah other than gold is silver. And Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda holds that any other metal, in addition to kesef, into this silver, is kosher, but they all agree that non-metal substances are completely excluded from the creation of a menorah. Amalei. So if Yosef hears this presentation of Rav Papa and the Bryce that he quotes, my daitcha, what do you think? You think that you can explain the machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, based on your version of this brisa? Amalei. Rav Papa said, Bein mar ubein mar, klole uprati darshu. Again, all this will explain as we go through the sugya. Mi umar sovar ma hefresh ma prat meforash shel mateches av kol shel mateches. Okay, so we're going to have a klal prat uklal, and Rebbe Shita, the way Rav Papa transmits it, is that ein beklal elamasha befrat, that the klal that expands the original statement has to be similar to the prat. And therefore, we're going to say, according to Rebbe, that the similarity to the prat is that it's very, very similar to gold. And the metal that's very similar to gold, because of its chashivus, is kesef. Umar sover, but when we get to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, just one second. Oh, so first we started with Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, then he expands kol shel mateches. That's what is unique about zav is that it's metal, and therefore any metallic substance. Umar sovar, but if we go to Rebbe Shita, ma prat meforish dover choshev, I've called dover choshev. Rebbe sees in the prat of zav something that's dover choshev, and therefore the ein bichlal el masha b'prat, similarity to the prat, has to be something like zov that's very choshev, a very precious metal, and therefore it's limited to kesef. Any other metallic substance is excluded. Omalei, says Rabbi Yossi to Rav Papa, that's your brisa. Forget about your brisa. I have another brisa. Sami didoch mekamedi. You should get rid of your version of the brisa and accept my version of the brisa. I have the true, correct, accurate, and authoritative brisa. The sign you learned in the brisa, clay, shores, shason shal eitz, Rebbe posel, Rabbi Yosef Rebbe Yehuda, machshir. So we're talking about service vessels, clay shores. Rebbe says that if you make them from wood, again, Rebbe is only excluding wood. Apparently, he's accepting all metals, not like the Brisa of Reb Papa. Rabbi Yosef Rebbe Yehuda machshir, he accepts even wood. A kli shares, according to Rabbi Yosef Rebbe Yehuda, can be made out of wood. Rebbe Dorash. Okay, so this embarks on a. Let's just see how we're doing on the clock. Oh boy, I don't know how we're going to manage all this, but we'll try it. There's something called klal prat uklal, and then there's something called ribuye umiyute. The difference is as follows. Klal prat uklal is very limiting. It restricts it because it's got to be similar to the prat, and only if it's similar to the prat can we accept it. For example, in this case, eitz, wood, is not at all similar to the prat of zav. But then there's something called miute, ribuye miute. Ribuye miute allows you to take the prat and expand it to include everything except for one. It only excludes one. And if you accept the ribuye umiute approach, which is going to be Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, then we're going to expand zav to include everything, with the exception of one. And that one is going to be a kli cheres that's made out of clay, made out of pottery, earthenware. But all metals and even eitz are going to be accepted, even wood, are going to be accepted based on ribuye umiute. So again, Rabbi Osai, I apologize that I can't spend about an hour on this, but because we have to finish the daf. But hopefully you got the general idea. You'll see it also fleshed out here. Rabbi Darish Kol Yiprat V'Yasisa Menorah Klal. The Torah says V'Yasisa Menoras, and the word Menoras with a tuf at the end means a klal. And then it says Zohav Tahar, and that's a prat. Miksha Teasa Menorah Chazar v'kol. Remember, we said before that the word te'asa is a ribui. So we have now a klal, including everything. Says Rebbe, klal uprat uklal iatadon elkein prat. It's got to be very, very similar to the prat. And the prat we said was zav tar. Ma prat meforish al mateches. So again, since you have a klal, you can expand the prat to anything very similar to the prat, which means any metal substance. Af kol shu mateches. So the only exclusion we're going to have now, according to Rebbe, is eitz. For kol shkein, and how much more so cheres. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Darish ribuye miute, and therefore you can expand the klal expands to everything except for one thing. And therefore, vasisa menoras ribui. So we start with not a klal, but we call a ribui, because it says v'yasisa minoras, which means any substance. So of tar miut, okay, we have a problem here because then the Torah limits it. But miksha te'asa hamenorah, the word te'asa is not a klal, but it's a ribui. It's cause of a ribui. And therefore, we're going to apply the principle, says Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, that riba umiyut for riba kol. We're going to expand it to include everything. So it's not just limited as Rebbe would have it to mini matechas, but it will include even an eitz. Umay rabbe kol mili. Umay miyut, but there's got to be some miyut. I mean, after all, you did have a miyut from the word zav tar, miyut shel cheres. So again, now we have the correct brisa, says Rabbi Yosef, according to the transmission of the machlokas between Rabbi Yosef Yehuda and Rebbe in this correct authoritative brisa. Rebbe will accept all metallic substances for a menorah, and Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda will go beyond metallic substances, accept all substances, including wood, only to exclude one thing, and that one thing is cheres made out of earthenware. Adarabah. Rav Papa says to Rav Chisda, why do you prefer your brisa to my brisa? Sami didoch mekami didi. Get rid of your brisa and accept my brisa. Lo sal kadak, says Rav Yosef, you can't say such a thing. Why? Desanya, I have another brisa that's going to support my brisa. And not only that, Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda is going to bring a third brisa. So it's 3 against 1. You have 3 brisas that reestablish my transmission. You have 1 brisa of yours. Yours must be incorrect. Desanya, we went to the brisa, ein lo zav. Is maybe afshel kesef shel nechoshes shel barzel shel bedil shel afores, that if you don't have gold to make the menorah, you can use any metallic substance, whether it's silver, copper, iron, tin, or lead. Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda machshir af b'shalates, and Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda extends it to include a shalates. So it's not your transmission, my friend Rav Papa, that Rebbe only allows kesef, but not any other metallic substance. And according to your Rav Papa's version, Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda expands it to include all metallic substances, but to exclude eights. No, that's not so. V'tanya yidach, and I have a third brisa. Lo yasa adam bias tavnis heichal. Okay, I'm a little bit worn out over here because now we have another hour of discussion here about the different parts of the Beis Hamikdash. But we'll just try to do it, in at least, to get it on the surface level. We're not allowed to reproduce replicas of the Mikdash and of the menorah, as we'll soon see, for our own personal purposes. You can imagine you build a house and you use the structure or the plans of the Beis Hamikdash for your house. Can't do that. So, for example, he wants to build a house that has the tavnit. The tavnit is the plan, the structural architectural plan, and has within it the heichal. The heichal is the holy parts where the Aron of Shtei Luchos was, the Aron Bris, and the Menorah Zav, and so forth and so on. And Achsadra Keneged Ulam, and he wants to make an Achsadra that looks like the Ulam. Again, it's Machlok Rashi talks about the dimensions of the Ulam. Anyway, Chotzer Keneged Azara, he wants to make his courtyard look like the Azara in the Beis Hamikdash. Not only that, he wants to build a shulchan that looks exactly like the shulchan in the Heichal in the Beis Hamikdash. So you're not allowed to do that shulchan keneged shulchan. Menorah keneged menorah. He wants to create a menorah that looks exactly like the menorah in the Mikdash. I went out with a girl when I was single in my dating days. And she was from Borough Park. I mean, that doesn't sound very significant until you hear the punchline. I came in, it was Hanukkah. Came in for the date. They were lighting a menorah. They wanted me to climb up the steps. You can't reach this menorah unless you climb up the steps, made of pure gold, and light the menorah. Whoa. Anyway, if he makes a different number of branches in his personal menorah, and he doesn't have 7 branches, that's fine. That's okay. Shel shiva lo yaseh, but not a menorah of 7 branches. I think, by the way, I didn't get a chance to research this, that in shuls you're allowed to do it, not on a personal menorah for your table. Anyway, afilu mishamini mitachos. You're not allowed to make a menorah even from other mini mitachos, and this is going to be the sheet of Rebbe. Another brisa that proves that Rebbe accepts a menorah made of other metallic substances, and therefore you can't reproduce that for your own purposes on your own table. And Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda says afshel eitz. Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda went a step further. You don't even need a metal substance for the menorah. You can make it out of wood, lo yas, and therefore you can't produce it for yourself. A menorah of 7 branches out of wood. And not only that, kiderech she'osu malchei beis chashmonaim, when the Chashmonaim got rid of the Greeks, as we like to say, the mighty Greeks are gone. Okay, you don't know. Okay, I guess you're not fans of the Maccabees. But anyway, after the Maccabees were gone, then They built a menorah. The Maccabim could not get hold of the menorah Zav. That was taken by the Greeks. What they did was they produced the menorah for the last 2 centuries of the Bayis Sheni, and that menorah was made out of wood. Okay, Amru Lo. So the Chachamim respond to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Visham Raya, don't bring me any proof from the Chashmonoim. Shapudim shel barzel hoyu. Right, the menorah that was produced by the Chashmonoim was not really pure eights. It wasn't made purely of wood. It had spits, which are called shpudim, of iron that somehow, were the basis of the menorah. And on top of the iron, they covered it with eights. The chifum be-eights. Okay, the whole long discussion in Tosfos here about shipudim shel barzel. You'll see it the second Tosfos on the page. Heshiru, when they got wealthy, they were very, very poor at that time. The Gemara says in Tainus they couldn't even afford a cup of wine for Havdalah. So they made Havdalah in Chonin Adas in Tefillah. Anyway, Heshira Asom Shal Kesef, Chozvishim Asom Shal Sof. So ultimately, I don't know exactly at what point in time, when the Jewish people got wealthy and there was no longer principle of Chosr Rachman Amanim Shal Yisrael, they built a menorah out of Zav. Okay, so what do we see? We see clearly that there are 3 brises supporting the transmission of Rabbi Yossi, and therefore we're going to accept those 3 brises. We're not going to accept the brisa of Rav Papa. Omar Shmuel B'Shmei de Saba, in the name of some elder, he said, Gova Shel Menorah Shmona Sar Tfachim, 18 Tfachim high. And now we're going to go through all the parts of menorah to calculate that the menorah in the Mikdash was 18 Tfachim high. Maybe he tells you how high is 18 Tfachim. I mean, that's going to be a gigantic machlokus between Rav Chaim Noah and the Chazon Ish, but anyway, he doesn't have it here. Haraglayim ve'haperach. Okay, so at the base of menorah there were legs and there was flour. So we now have 3 tfach. Utfachayim chalak. Then there was a blank space of 2 tfachim. So now we have 5 tfach in height. Tefach shebo gvir v'kafta ferach. Then there was a tefach that had the goblets, the knobs, and the flowers. Then tfachayim chalak. Next 2 tfachim again are blank. So now we're up to 8 tfachim. Tefach kaftar. Next tefach is the knob. Shnei konim yotzu mimenu. 2 branches emerge from it. Echad elech v'echad elech. On this side and on that side, imshachim v'olim. They extend and rise. Keneged gova shel menorah. Now we're up to 9 tfachim. Tefach chalak, or a blank tefach. That's 10 tfachim. Tefach kaftar. The next tefach is the knob. Shnei konim yotzu mimenu. 2 konim branches came out of the knob. Echad elech v'echad elech. And Nimshachim v'olim keneged gova shel menorah. They extended rise all the way to the level, the height of menorah. V'tefach chalak is an extra tefach. V'tefach kaftar. The next tefach is the knob. Shnei konim yotzim mimenu. Echad elech nimshachim v'olim keneged gova shel menorah. They extended the rise to the level, the height of the menorah. Utfachayim chalak, and next 2 tfachim are blank. And then ishtayru sham shlosha tfachim shebahem shlosha gevin v'kaftar v'ferch. All told, 18 tfachim. Ugvim lamayim tomin. What do these goblets look like? Kimin kosos Alexandrium. Apparently, in Alexandria in Egypt, they had some very beautiful cups. And here I have a little bit of a diagram of what these cups look like. Kaftorim. What about the knobs? Lamayim domim. They look like kimin tapuche hakresium. Okay, I was never in Cracia, but apparently they had some sort of apples in Cracia that were very beautiful. Rashi says that Cracia, the kaftar, is called a pamel in Old French, which means a ball or a knob and a small apple. Prochim l'mayim domim kemin pirchei ha'amudim. Sculptured in columns. Again, we need this diagram here. And actually, there are 3 different diagrams here because there are 3 different sheets that how to interpret the Rashis here, all told. But kaftor v'fer. The nimtzu. In other words, if you're looking around at all these ornamental features, Gvim esrim ushnayim. The goblets are 22. Kaftorim achadasar 11. Prochim tisha. Gvim ma'akfim zeh. We need all these Gvim, all 21 are absolutely critical. Kaftorim, likewise, the goblets. I'm sorry, what are we up to? We did Gvim on the cups, right? So you need 21 cups. Actually, 22, I'm sorry. And you have the knobs. How many knobs were there? 11 knobs. We said those are called kaftorim. And it's all 11 or bust. Prachim akfim said the flowers. We said there were 9 flowers. They're all essential. Gvi and kaftorim prachim, the goblets, the knobs, and the flowers. Ma'akfin et zeh. He says if a goblet is missing, it is as if there were no knobs or flowers. If even one of these 42 is missing, the entire menorah is invalidated. Wow. I understand how you calculate that these cups that hold the shemen are 22. It says menorah bo gvim uksiv shlosh gvim mishukodim mekona echad kafta v'ferach is our body day. And therefore the Gemara, and with this will end on the top of Daf. Chavtes Omen Aleph, Timni Srari the Kanim, 18 goblets of the 6 branches, and therefore you have 18 and 4. Ha Esrim V'Tartin, it equals 24. Kaftorin Nami, with regard to knobs, it says Achadasar Kaftorim. Why is it 11 knobs? Trey the day, the central part of the Nor has 2 knobs. Shisha Dekanim. So 6 and 2 is 8. So how do you get to 11? Because there are 3 times it says the word kaftor, kaftor, and therefore we get another 3 knobs, and therefore we add the 3 knobs to the 6 plus 2 is 8, is 3, and 8 is 11. So we have chada, so we have 11. El prachim tisha minolan, prachim tredi day v'shisha dekanim tmanya havyan. You have, if you count the flowers, we have in the central part of the flowers have 2 plus, we have 6 on the 6 branches of the menorah. 2 plus 6 is Tam Yahavin, there are 8. And that leads us to Amar of Shalmon, which in Mitzvah Shem, we'll pick up tomorrow at around noontime. See you then. Have a great day.